So mine is going to be a question, basically, Prof. There's a man missing in action from January 1966 to the period leading to the war, yeah, actually. I don't know where this man is, and nobody has ever talked about him. This man actually literally participated in getting the independence of Nigeria. And I find it very hard that the man was not there when Ojukwu was taking all the actions that he was taking. But when Ojukwu wanted to participated in the coup wanted to do coup in 1964, he informed this same man. Please, can you tell me where is Nnamdi Azikiwe in all of this? I wanted to know. Can you please tell me where is Nnamdi Azikiwe when Awolowo was begging, what's his name, Ojukwu not to go to war? Some delegate was sent to him not to do that. A lot of people was going to meet Ojukwu, but a man who actively fought, was one of those who fought for the independence of Nigeria from a colonial master, was just missing in action. I don't know. I wanted to know what was the role of Nnamdi Azikiwe in all of this.
What I can tell you is this. Initially, Azikiwe actually supported Biafra. As a matter of fact, he was an ambassador for Biafra. He traveled to different places, including France, to get people to get different nations to support Biafra. So he was actually working for Biafra at the beginning, right? But much later, he switched sides and decided to move to Lagos. And by the way, that's the reason people in the East hate him, because he stopped believing in Biafra. As a matter of fact, at the time he told France not to send food. He supported Biafra in the beginning. He traveled, to get recognition for Biafra. Then later on, maybe he didn't see what he was expecting. This was in 1968. He switched sides and moved to Nigerian side, but he wasn't really an elder statesman in that period. The only thing we saw was that when he moved and started giving interviews, TV interviews, saying, they should stop Biafra, they should not kill themselves, it's not necessary to kill again. Okay, I'll bring you, just send your request, Dark Word, I'll bring you back up soon. It's not necessary to kill again and all of those things, but initially, he supported Biafra. He came in at the time when the war was being prosecuted. He was in the East, and then he just went with it. And when he eventually was going to move, even Ojukwu seized some of his properties. I don't think he ever gave it back to him. His books, some of the things that he had, never really go back to him. But he wasn't part of all this delegation. He wasn't part of the delegation for the National Conciliation Committee. He wasn't part of it. This was led by Awo. Who am I referring to? Azikiwe. Chinua Achebe went back to the East. He left NBC. He didn't run away. He ran to the East. Excuse me. You find out in his book, There Was a Country. Chinua Achebe did not run away. He went back. I don't know if I should say ran, but he went back to the East. And he also became an ambassador for Biafra and also worked with the Ministry of Information, which is essentially what people call the Directorate of Propaganda. That's what Achebe did. But Azikiwe, he became an ambassador for Biafra. And then he's changed his mind, and today people hate him. Everybody that hates him in Igbo land hates him because he stopped believing in Biafra, and to the point where he called the governor of France to stop selling food to them. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Prof.
Yes, sir.
He didn't come back in 1966 at all. When did he came back in? I
will have to check. I'll have to. No. So you have to also remember that.
The voice of the East totally becomes silent at a point. Oh wow.
Okay, I will see if I can provide more answers tomorrow. But that much is what I can say. But was it silent? He was silent. Was it? Who said Zik never supported Biafra? I told you, Chris, why are you like this? Why are you loud with ignorance? Zik that was traveling the world for Biafra, you say he's never supported Biafra. You know what? Because he spoke. Guys, give me a second. I'll read this after the next person. So why am I doing this? Because I'm trying to teach you, Atuchi, to stop lying. There's nothing to gain from lies. Let's have Yemisi. Once Yemisi is done, I'm going to read to you what Zik did in Biafra, since you want to lie here. So let's start with this. As the crisis escalated in 1966, Azikiwe was reportedly in England seeking medical attention during the January coup that toppled the Balewa government. His absence led to speculation that he was aware of the coup, although he dismissed this as a mere coincidence. He was not immediately invited back to Nigeria by General Ironsi, returning in a private capacity as a journalist some months later. Let me read something to you from Crisis and Conflict. This is from Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria by A.H.M. Kirkland. It says here, it is Federal Ministry of Information Press. It is possible that this interview, he was interviewed at a Surrey hotel. Dr. Azikiwe said he would return to Nigeria if he could, as a father of his people. Quote, all I am interested in is restoring peace. He wanted to return as a father of his people, but eventually return as a journalist. 1 second. There's something I'm looking for. Oh, I opened it just now. It's a book called Nnamdi Azikiwe and the Nigerian Civil War. I want to read something from there. I'll go back to another book. Ojukwu characteristically treated the late elder statesman with scorn. Before the war ever began, Ojukwu removed Azikiwe as the life chancellor of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Besides this, Zik and many of the older politicians were disturbed by the autocratic style of government that Ojukwu brought to eastern Nigeria as governor of the region. The appointment of Ojukwu's father to some boards, for instance, did not sit well with Zik. That is, you are hearing nepotism, Abi? So Ojukwu appointed his father to some boards. It did not sit well with Zik and his group, who felt that the military took over power to correct the mistakes of the past, including tribalism and nepotism. It follows then that when secession was being hatched, any form of opposition to it came, so it was against, it was for, then it was against, in like regular Zik fashion. So it says, it follows then that when secession was being hatched, any form of opposition to it came mainly from Zik and majority of the old politicians like Matthew Mbu and such lawyers as Louis Mbanefo. Their opposition had little or no effect as events had reached a point of no return. As Ojukwu said then, I think we are now rolling downhill and it will take a great deal to halt the momentum. End quote. Even in the Consultative Assembly, which became Biafra's parliament once the Civil War started, Zik found he had no influence. The much younger and radical members of the assembly were not ready to defer to him and benefit from his experience. Rather, the few times he attended the assembly sessions, he was shouted down as an, quote, old politician. Zik was later to say about that assembly that, quote, no votes are taken as such and almost everything of the Consultative Assembly unanimously carries a written vote of implicit confidence in the leadership of Colonel Ojukwu. If anybody contradicted the content of such a previously prepared resolution, he runs the risk of being detained. The disregard for Zik by Ojukwu and his government was to continue throughout the period he was in the rebel enclave. From 1966 to 1969, Bernard Odogu, one of the actors during the war, says in his book, No Place to Hide, that Ojukwu's disrespect for Zik was evident even on the foreign trips they undertook together. For example, in 1968, when Zik, by the way, 68, Zik was already 64 years old. Ojukwu was in his 30s. In 1968, when Zik was summoned to accompany the rebel leader on a trip, he was only given less than an hour's notice. Joe Achuzia, one of Biafra's war commanders, said in his book, Requiem Biafra, that another factor, this is actually very, very important. I mentioned this earlier, but I'll tell you exactly what he did and how they traveled after this one. Another factor that probably contributed to Zik's frustrations and bitterness must have been the loss of his property at Nsukka. After the Biafran army withdrew, abandoning it to the federal troops. As the story went and as corroborated by Odogu, Zik at first refused to live in Nsukka, and Ojukwu was said to have been miffed. He asked rhetorically whether the reason for his refusal to leave the city was because of his much talked about library, or whether he wanted to be a prized catch for the federal troops. Achuzia said Zik was forced to flee the town. The property, according to him, were loaded into 14 trucks, with a copy of the inventory made out in triplicate. One for that's Achuzia's headquarters file, and two enclosed in the letter to His Excellency Ojukwu, and the property being sent to him for onward delivery to Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. Zik never recovered his property intact. But let me read the other part to you. I'm trying to read a lot of Igbo books. This is Achebe, Chino Achebe. The book is called There Was a Country. I'm just going to read a portion of it. It says, a few of the roving ambassadors for Biafra were Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who later left the breakaway republic, Dr. Kingsley Ozumba, K.O. Mbadewe, Professor Ojukwu, Chukwuma Azikiwe, Dr. Larry Okam, Dr. Okechukwu Ikejani, as well as Cyprian Ekwensi. In this book by Achebe said that the roving ambassadors, some of them, the number one person they will mention is Dr. Azikiwe. He traveled on his own on behalf of Biafra. I think there's one more thing I want to read. 1 second. This is from the Nigerian Civil War by John de Senjor. It says here, the quality and breadth of talent among the emissaries played a crucial part, and it is arguable that if the tireless, constantly moving delegations had not contained so many stars, the result would have been much less satisfying. Most of the principal emissaries were already known to and respected by the leaders they were lobbying, and had made a name for themselves not only in Africa but outside the continent too. The fact that the plea of recognition came from academics, lawyers, churchmen and diplomats, as well as politicians and soldiers, significantly increased its impact. Men like Sir Francis Ibiam, a former president of the World Council of Churches and governor of the Eastern region, the gentle and scholarly Sir Louis Mbanefo, a member of the World Court in The Hague, two distinguished former vice-chancellors, Kenneth Dickey and Edin Ojukwu, and the ex-premier of the East, Michael Okpara, were all deeply involved in the quote-unquote recognized Biafra operation. But the man who decisively swung the key states of Tanzania and Ivory Coast around was the former president of Nigeria, Nnamdi Azikiwe. Zeke's impact cannot be overstressed. The father of Nigerian nationalism and an international figure of many years standing, he had been one of Nyerere's and Kaunda's early heroes. That he, the leading architect of Nigeria's unity, should now be advocating its demolition was an argument of considerable force. It is significant that Zeke made a long tour around Africa, including Ivory Coast, Tanzania and Zambia, just before the recognitions, and unlike the other Biafran emissaries who had to creep in by the side door, he was treated in the red carpet style of the president he used to be. The recognitions were a landmark in the war. They suddenly injected new hope into Biafra just when everything seemed without hope. Zeke did not only just go with Ojukwu, he represented Biafra. And there may have been many reasons that made him do it. I don't even think he's a demon for doing it, but the problem I have with it is with people always trying to deny the past, like Atuche just did now. But the point is that it may have been difficult for him to pull out. But did he work for Biafra? He did. He did. And when he had the opportunity in 1968, he jackpad to Lagos and he started working against Biafra, and that is why he is hated today. And while he was even inside Biafra, he was not respected by Ojukwu. That episode of his books, that one, it was actually quite painful. 14 trucks of his library, and they just scattered everything because Ojukwu did not do what he was supposed to do. But again, Ojukwu was not respectful of him. Ojukwu was also very nepotistic, appointing his father onto boards as a military administrator. But again, he was just carrying on the tradition. So, as we work with Biafra until he stopped working with Biafra, I hope we answered that question in the short time we had. Thank you very much. Let's go to...
You did answer my question, Prof. And this...
You know what? Ask the question. What's the question?
Yeah, it's actually on the same thing. Looking at the